Some people don't realize they're drowning until the water reaches their lips. This is the story of one such man. A man who had everything and was losing it all, slowly, silently, without even knowing, until life gave him 72 hours, and everything changed. Daniel Carter was the kind of man people admired from a distance. Sharp suit, corner office, name on the building directory. At just 34, he had built a career that most people spent their entire lives chasing. His colleagues called him a machine. His boss called him irreplaceable. His phone never stopped ringing. But his daughter, she called him the man who sleeps on the couch sometimes, because that's all she knew of him. A shadow that came home late, ate cold food standing at the kitchen counter, and disappeared again before sunrise. Daniel told himself it was temporary. He told himself just a few more years. Then I'll slow down. Then I'll be present. Then I'll be a real father, a real husband, a real person. But years have a funny way of passing, and later has a funny way of never arriving. It was a Thursday morning in November. Cold, gray, ordinary. Daniel was in the middle of a board meeting, presenting quarterly numbers he had memorized in the car on the way in, when something strange happened. The words stopped coming. He was mid-sentence and suddenly, nothing. His vision blurred at the edges. The room tilted slightly. A sharp pain, like a fist, squeezed his chest from the inside. He grabbed the edge of the table. "Daniel?" someone said. "You okay?" He opened his mouth to say I'm fine because that was always the answer, but instead his knees buckled. And Daniel Carter, the man who never stopped, hit the floor. He woke up to white ceiling tiles and the smell of antiseptic. A monitor beeped steadily beside him, and 4 was taped to his left hand. And a doctor, young, calm, with tired eyes, was standing at the foot of his bed holding a clipboard. "Mr. Carter, you're awake. Good." Daniel tried to sit up. The doctor stopped him with one hand. "Easy. Your heart triggered an episode. Nothing irreversible yet. But your body is sending you a very clear message." "What kind of message?" Daniel asked. His voice came out smaller than he expected. The doctor pulled a chair close and sat down. That's when Daniel knew it was serious. Doctors only sit down for serious conversations. "Mr. Carter, your stress markers are through the roof. Your blood pressure, your cortisol levels, your sleep patterns, everything is telling us the same story. You have been running on empty for a very long time." Daniel said nothing. "I want to run a full cardiac panel. Come back in 72 hours. The doctor leaned forward slightly. "But between now and then, and I mean this medically, not poetically, what you do in these next 72 hours could determine the rest of your life." 72 hours. The doctor left. The nurse dimmed the lights, and Daniel lay there in the quiet, the first real quiet he had experienced in years, staring at the ceiling. 72 hours. His phone was on the bedside table. 17 notifications. For missed calls from the office. He turned it face down. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Daniel Carter had absolutely nowhere to be. They discharged him that evening with a list of instructions and a small orange bottle of pills. He sat in his car in the hospital parking lot. Engine off. Hands in his lap. It was 7 p.m. and the city outside was loud and rushing. People going home, headlights everywhere. Someone honking at someone else for reasons that suddenly felt very small. Daniel watched it all through the windshield like it was a movie he wasn't part of. 72 hours. He picked up his phone, opened his contacts, scrolled slowly. Work, work, client, work, assistant, work. He kept scrolling, further and further back into a list of people he used to know. And then he stopped. "Mom." He stared at the name for a long moment. The last time he had called her, really called her, not a 2-minute check-in while driving, was, he couldn't remessage her birth this year? His thumb hovered over the name. He pressed call. It rang twice. "Daniel." Her voice was warm. Instantly warm. The way only a mother's voice can be at 7 p.m. when her son calls without warning. "Is everything okay, sweetheart?" And something cracked open inside his chest. Not his heart this time. Something else. Something older. "No, Mom." he said quietly. I don't think it is. Silence on the line. Then, where are you? Sitting in a parking lot. Are you hurt? Kind of. Another pause. Then very gently, come home, Daniel. He drove 3 hours that night. Past the city. Past the suburbs. Down the long highway that smelled like pine trees and rain. To the small house he grew up in, where the porch light was already on when he pulled into the driveway at 10 p.m. His mother was waiting at the door in her robe and slippers. She didn't ask questions. She didn't say, I told you so. She just opened her arms. And Daniel, 34 years old, corner office, name on the directory, walked into his mother's hug and stayed there for a very long time. Inside, she made him soup he didn't ask for. Chamomile tea he didn't want but drank anyway. She turned on the small lamp in the living room, the one with the yellow shade that had been there since he was 7, and they sat together at the kitchen table. And they just talked. Not about work. Not about goals or plans or quarterly numbers. About everything else. About the summer they drove to the coast when he was 12 and the car broke down and they ate chips on the side of the road laughing. About his father, gone 11 years now, and how he used to whistle while he cooked. About small things. Real things. Daniel laughed 3 times that night. Real laughs, the kind that surprise you on the way out. And when he finally went to sleep in his old room, in his old bed, under the same ceiling he had stared at as a teenager dreaming of the future, he slept for 9 hours straight. He couldn't remember the last time that had happened. The next morning he called his best friend James. They hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. Life had gotten in the way it always does when you let it. James picked up on the second ring. Daniel Carter. You're alive. Barely, Daniel said. And then he told him everything. James listened without interrupting. That was always his gift. The ability to just listen. Daniel had forgotten how rare that was. When he finished, James said simply, come over. I'll make terrible coffee and we can sit in the backyard and do absolutely nothing. That sounds perfect, Daniel said. And it was. They sat in plastic chairs in James's backyard for 4 hours. Drank bad coffee. Watched the neighbor's dog chase a bird it would never catch. Talked about nothing important and everything that mattered. At one point, they didn't speak for 20 full minutes. Just sat there. In the silence. And it wasn't awkward. It was the most comfortable Daniel had felt in years. On the final evening, hour 68 of his 72, Daniel drove to the primary school where his daughter Emma had her end-of-term play. He hadn't planned to go. He hadn't even known about it until his wife Sarah sent a single text that morning. Emma's play is tonight at 6. In case you're around. In case you're around. For words that carried the weight of 1,000 missed dinners. He arrived late. Slipped into the back row while the lights were already dim. On the small stage, 12 7-year-olds were performing a story about the seasons. Terrible costumes. Forgotten lines. One boy walked the wrong direction for 30 seconds while the teacher whispered frantically from the wings. The audience laughed warmly. And then Emma walked out, dressed as the sun. Yellow cardboard rays around her face, gap-toothed smile, completely unaware that she was the most beautiful thing Daniel had ever seen. She said her lines confidently. She waved at the audience. And then, as her eyes swept the room, they landed on him. In the back row. In his work coat. Completely out of place. Her face changed. Not dramatically. Just a light came on. The way a light comes on. She gave a tiny wave. Daniel raised his hand and waved back. And something inside him, something that had been locked tight for years, quietly finally opened. He cried in the car afterwards. Not sad tears. The other kind. The kind that come when something real reaches you after a long time of nothing reaching you at all. 72 hours later, Daniel sat across from his doctor again. New tests. New numbers. The doctor studied them carefully, then looked up. Your body has responded remarkably well. Whatever you did these past 3 days. He paused. Keep doing it. Daniel nodded slowly. I called my mother, he said. I sat in a backyard with my best friend. I watched my daughter be the sun. The doctor smiled, a real one, not a professional one. That, he said quietly, is exactly the kind of medicine we can't prescribe. Daniel didn't quit his job. He didn't sell everything and move to a farm. Life doesn't work like that. But he made 3 promises to himself that he wrote on a small card and kept in his wallet. Call mom. Every Sunday. No excuses. Show up. Even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. Remember, you are a person first. Everything else is second. Small promises. But promises kept are the only ones that matter. And here is what Daniel learned in those 72 hours that no boardroom ever taught him. The meetings will always be there. The deadlines will always come. The work will never be fully done. But the moment your daughter sees you in the back row, the moment your mother opens her arms at 10 p.m. without asking why, the moment your best friend makes terrible coffee and asks for nothing in return, those moments don't wait. They come once, and then they're gone. Don't be so busy building a life that you forget to live one. If the story made you feel something, give it a like. Share it with someone who needs to slow down today. And subscribe, because every week, we bring you stories that don't just fill your time. They remind you what time is actually for. Until next time, call your mother, hug your people, and remember, you still have time, but don't waste it.